asked to be here to bring you a word. I'm told to bring a homily. It's the same number of letters in the word homily as is in the word sermon, but somehow it means something shorter. I'm glad to do that. The text I'm reflecting on today is from the 10th chapter of the book of Hebrews, beginning in verse 23. Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who has promised is faithful. And let us consider how to provoke one another to love and good deeds, not neglecting to meet together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, all the more as you see the day approaching. Of course, we know the day approached Saturday and did not get here. It's now been changed to October. We have two children, a son and a daughter. They're grown up now, but when we were little and we went on family trips, and all preachers have to tell stories about their families. Well, they teach us to do that. We went on trips. We knew something for sure. We knew that we could set the odometer for 200 miles. And at exactly 200 miles, our daughter would have to start something. She could be good for 200 miles in the back seat with her brother. She could read a book. She could listen to music. She could pretend to be interested in what we were looking at or what we were saying to her. But at exactly 200 miles, she would have to start something either by provoking her brother in a fight or getting her mother going or trying to get me going. It was predictable. Always this provocation that happened there. And that's part of our key thing in this little Hebrews text. Now, verse 23 tells us to hold fast to hope. And certainly those folks who have been working on this issue for these many decades have had to hold fast to hope, because hope sometimes is always in the midst of unbelievable obstacles to seeking the peace we all seek in this very important part of the world. The letter to the Hebrews is written to a specific group of folks who are facing persecution, who are being persecuted by their neighbors, by their town where they live, by the government where they are. They're all facing persecution, and this author is trying to help them deal with this persecution by offering them something to hold on to. So part of Hebrews, we know, presents this long, beautiful list of all the folks in the Old Testament who held on in faith, who marched like Abraham and Sarah, all those people who went on in faith. Though they never saw what they were marching towards, they still moved on with the promise, holding fast to the hope that was given to them. People who kept on and kept on, though they never saw the promise come to life, they kept moving on. As we're told, of course, fourth chapter, 15th verse, that we have this high priest who understands our weakness, so we are to approach the throne of grace with boldness, so that we receive mercy and find grace to help us in time of need. So even though we were told to hold fast, we are still told that it's not just about our ability to hold. It's also about God's ability to help us hold and to be those people that go forth. But in verse 42, he says this thing which I think is really interesting. Let us consider how to provoke one another to love and good deeds. And that's something my daughter never learned when she was a child. She's gotten better at that. The word is parakumas. That's the Greek word. And it doesn't mean provoke, this nice word. It really means to irritate or exasperate. Okay? That's what it means. It's to irritate or exasperate. And that my daughter could do. To love and good deeds. Which seems, crazy. Why would you exasperate somebody to love a good deed? It's not usually the way it works. Now, in other translations, they've tried to downplay this word. In the New International Version, they talk about spurring on people to love and good deeds. In the Message by David Peterson, it's encourage people to love and good deeds. The Over's Revised Standard Version, it's to stir up people to love and good deeds. And in the New Century Version, it's to help each other to do love or good deeds. But I think we lose out on the impact of this word if we try to make it sound nice. And being nice, in my experience in the church, is one of the worst four-letter words we have. It's the most disempowering word that there is. So the more accurate translation would be, let us irritate each other to love and good deeds. In other words, to see this as holy provocation. Holy provocation. How do we, doing what it is we're called to do as people, brothers and sisters with each other in Christ, how do we wholly provoke each other, wholly irritate each other, wholly exasperate each other to do the things that we're called to do? It seems to me this is part of the role of the churches in Middle East peace. How do we engage in holy provocation on behalf of the faith community, in the faith community, to do what is right and to bring about this long-sought peace in the Middle East? I recently read a book called Blessed Are the Peacemakers. It's basically a thesis written by a professor at LSU. And it's the story of the 8 white ministers who wrote the letter to Martin Luther King in Birmingham that resulted in the letter from the Birmingham jail. So that's sort of the story. And he does a great job of going into the story of these 8 ministers, and they represent almost all of us, Methodists and Episcopalians and Catholics and Presbyterians, Baptists. We're all in this story. And he does a great job telling each of their story, kind of how they came to have the mindset that they had, what their context was, all those things that we know we're supposed to do with exegesis. He exegeted this passage as to why they wrote this letter and why they felt it important to say this thing. And it was a public letter. It wasn't really necessarily addressed to him. And Martin Luther's letter, of course, was a public letter too. And what struck me in this letter was this, is how convinced they were that good people would do the right thing in time if you just let time have its way. You know, they were just convinced that good things would happen if you know, the good is the prevailing marker in the world, and good things will happen over time. Good people will do that. How convinced they were that patience was a greater virtue than justice. You know, they were convinced that if everybody would just chill out and calm down and just, again, be patient with each other, that somehow justice would happen. Because we know that's not always the case. How convinced they were that provocation did not produce love and good deeds. They were convinced that provocation only got things bad. They upset the nice factor. That's always the factor in the life of the church. And they upset people, and that provocation was not a good thing. And how convinced they were that all was peaceful and progressing nicely until outside agitators came along. You know, how we look back on that time and we think about all the things that happened that period and all the lessons we've learned since then, and yet still these are the same arguments that are still made around this issue and around other issues that we fight for justice in the church. These are the same comments we hear now, even particularly on the issues of justice and peace for Israel and Palestine. Just give it more time. You know, patience is the higher virtue. All of these things. But my read of the Gospels is that the good news of Jesus Christ is that Jesus is the original outside agitator. When the Gospel enters a conversation, equilibrium is upset, and all those things that are probably natural to us as human beings, certainly natural to us as I am, a boy raised in the South by a mother who thought manners were the highest virtue in the world. All those things are upset in the world. I was told never to talk about race, religion, or politics, and here I am. Ultimate rebel. The ultimate rebel. Because that's part of it. You know, we have this force that's pushing against us all the time to try to be the nice Christian people in the world and just be nice. And sometimes being nice is not what it's about. And certainly, if we follow the gospel and if we let the Spirit run loose in our life, and this is a Presbyterian saying. The good thing will happen. I've really been wrestling all this year with a particular verse in Philippians. It's the second part of Philippians, and where Paul is talking to Philippians. And everybody sort of takes Philippians as a sort of pleasant little Hallmark card kind of little epistle. But really, it's about some very tough stuff. And he gets in that second chapter, and he talks, and he kind of gives them this little hymn about Christ, emptying Christ's self, all that good part. And then it gets down to the end. This is the part that keeps me getting up in the morning. It is. It's in verse 13 in 2 Philippians. For it is God who is at work in you, enabling you both to will and to work for His good pleasure. To will and to work for His good pleasure. Now, again, as a Presbyterian from the Calvinistic work ethic, I can work all day long. We can all work all day long. But this will, to know that God is also working in our will, is comfort to me. That's the part that needs that needs a personal training, which we have, of course, in Jesus Christ. So much, sisters and brothers, we need to hold on to this hope that inside of us, God is not working just to get the work done, but to get the will done, so that we'll do what God calls us to do, provoke our churches and our Congress and our government to do what is right and to create a genuine two-state solution. Not a real state and a pretend state. Okay, it has to be two real states, real countries, real capitals, all the real things that make up two real states. Two real neighbors with two real futures, two real senses of identity, two real abilities to control their future, two real abilities to control their reality, two real countries that, like any other two countries that sit side by side in the world. And two countries that have both of which have a sense of the future. I can't tell you how many times I've been in Israel or in Palestine on either side of the issue, and have been with people my age who are having conversations with their children who are saying, I'm giving it a couple more years, then I'm getting out of here, taking my education someplace else where I can make a life for myself. That's a great way to have no future for the country. Henry Nouwen is someone that many of us have read and has influenced our lives, and he wrote this one little passage that's also been meaningful to me. And this is what Henry says. There is within you a lamb and a lion. Spiritual maturity is the ability to let the lamb and the lion lay down together. Your lion is your adult, aggressive self. It is your initiative-taking and decision-making self. But there is also your fearful, vulnerable lamb, the part of you that will easily become a victim of your need for other people's attention. The art of spiritual living is to fully claim both your lamb and your lion. The art of spiritual living is to fully claim both your lamb and your lion. Then you can act assertively without denying your own needs. And all you can ask for affection and care without betraying your talent to offer leadership. We can be the lions. We can be the people that do the holy provocation to try to promote, to exasperate and irritate people to do good deeds and do what needs to be done as part of the world. And we can also own up to the fact that as many of us as mainline Christians and Catholics and others in this country, that we still want to be liked as denominations. Okay? Isn't it? That's kind of where it is, isn't it? You know? We do the right thing, we read about it in the paper, and then our lamb part is all crazy on us. But the art of spiritual living is to be both of those. Be the lion, be the person that does the holy provocation, the exasperating, irritating thing that provokes people to love and good deeds, not bad deeds and unloving things. But to also acknowledge that it's going to touch the part of us that's a lamb, that wants to be liked and be loved in this world. And sometimes we have to just sit there and ask ourselves, what is Christ calling us to do? How is Christ moving in my will to do that which needs to be done? This same daughter that I talked about when I began, she and her brother are now both grown-ups. They have a daughter's in ministry. My son's in pain. One deals with sin and one deals with sin. So we're but now that they're grown up, we can have these conversations about stuff that happened when they were younger. They finally tell us. I used to have these storm windows on our bedrooms, and they never fit. I never could figure out why they never fit. Well, I found out, years later, they climbed in and out of those windows like a turkey all the time. That's why they were always askew. But one of the things they told us that I know was true, but I didn't know they'd figured it out. And they figured it out quite early. Is that any time I told them, let me think about it, that meant no. That meant no. And I think that's where our lion and our lamb and our holy provocation need to push. We need to not just think about it. Something needs to happen.